At the beginning of the movie, we see the main character, Joe Harding, coming to the bank to find out why he received a foreclosure notice. The bank manager tells him it means he owes money to the state. When Joe asks why his mortgage payment has tripled, the manager reminds him that the reduced interest rate promotion has ended, and now he has to pay 3 times more. You did. I did what? You sold me this crap. The elderly man is outraged because he lives with his daughter and granddaughter, and they can't afford to lose their home. Moreover, when signing the agreement, the manager said the likelihood of the rate increasing was minimal, but now the manager insists on his position. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention. We've come to make a withdrawal. At that moment, 3 masked robbers burst into the bank. They demand that everyone except the tellers lie on their backs, raise their arms and legs, and freeze in a cat pose. Following the instruction, the manager starts whining. One of the robbers notices this and tells him to stay quiet. Then Joe says that his muscles have cramped, and the robber allows the elderly man to sit up. Joe hands the robber his foreclosure envelope. When the robber takes it, Joe notices a tattoo on his neck. The robber sympathizes with Joe's financial situation and says that society owes care to the older generation. You're just an account number. It's not much, but it's all yours. No, my friend, not from you. When Joe complains that the manager doesn't care, the robber takes his wallet. The robbers then leave the bank. Later, our main character gives testimony, telling the police about the tattoo on the robber's neck. He suggests finding the tattoo shop that did the design to track down the criminals. The FBI agent treats him with irony, but thanks him anyway. Joe's daughter Rachel and his granddaughter Brooklyn come to pick him up from the police station. On the way home, Brooklyn asks her grandfather everything about what he saw. She's thrilled that Joe witnessed a bank robbery, but Rachel doesn't share her excitement. That evening, Joe watches the news and sees the same FBI agent repeating his words about the tattoo, the same words he had laughed at earlier. The news also shows a sketch of the tattoo, asking anyone who recognizes the artist to contact the authorities. The next day, Joe and his friends Willie Davis and Albert Garner discuss the robbery while playing pétanque. G52. If I ever get that bad, shoot me. They agree that the robbery was carried out very professionally. They also find out that all 3 of them have received letters from the factory's pension department where they used to work. Later, it turns out that the factory is shutting down, moving all production to Vietnam, and the pension fund will be terminated. Centex Steel has frozen all pension payments during this transitional period. That evening, the 3 friends sit in a diner, trying to figure out what to do next. Joe suggests hiring a lawyer. Willie objects, saying they probably wouldn't live long enough to see the court's decision. When Joe gets home, he finds another notice from the bank, this time a red one, saying that his house will be taken away in a month. During his next doctor's appointment, Willie learns that he urgently needs a kidney donor. Because of his age and insurance status, he's at the very end of the transplant waiting list, so the chances of finding a donor on his own are almost 0. Willie promises to ask his relatives and friends, but during a video call with his daughter and granddaughter, he doesn't mention his illness. Meanwhile, Albert gives saxophone lessons to a teenager, but the boy can't play at all. The student hates the saxophone, and Albert tells him not to torture himself or the instrument. After leaving the student's house, Albert chats with the boy's grandmother, Annie, who flirts with him and says she saw him perform with the famous jazz musician Stan Getz back in 1977. Joe picks up his granddaughter from school, even though she insists she's old enough to walk home alone. After all, she's already 14. Brooklyn shows him her biology test, which she aced, and reminds him that he promised to buy her a puppy for her good grades. That evening, the friends gather at a diner to celebrate Willie's birthday. They give him a wristwatch with a photo of his granddaughter on it, and he puts it on right away. Suddenly, Joe says he's been thinking about the bank robbery. All of that? I'm thinking of robbing a bank. Everyone laughs it off, but then Joe shows them the bank notices and explains that he's about to lose his home. The banks have ruined millions of lives without ever facing consequences. Joe suggests the three of them rob a bank, escape with the money, and secure their retirement. In the worst-case scenario, they'll end up in prison, which means a bed, 3 meals a day, and healthcare better than what they have now. Joe is convinced they won't get caught because they have experience and skills on their side. After the party, they call each other, and Willie agrees to join the robbery. Albert refuses at first, but eventually gives in. As a practice run, the friends decide to steal groceries from the supermarket where Annie works. Willie and Joe leave Albert in the car, but he follows them anyway. Annie immediately notices him, helps them pick out groceries, and flirts with him. Albert insists he's not looking for any kind of relationship. Meanwhile, Willie and Joe's actions attract the attention of the store's security. The men try to quietly leave and get into the car with the stolen goods, but realize Albert isn't behind the wheel, which means they can't escape right away. Joe then steals an electric mobility scooter from one of the customers. At that moment, the security guard blows his whistle, and Willie jumps into a shopping cart. After a short chase, during which Willie uses a bag of flour as a makeshift smokescreen, they're caught anyway. Albert is also detained, even though he didn't steal anything. The guard just ran after him, and he reacted. All their actions are caught on camera, but the store manager forgives the unlucky thieves since they're quite old. He even gives them discount coupons and asks them not to steal again, or at least not from his store. As they leave, Albert gets furious, refuses to let his friends into his car, and calls them completely hopeless robbers. When he drives off, Willie sighs and admits that Albert is right. Joe decides they need advice from a professional. They contact Joe's former son-in-law and ask him to introduce them to someone capable of committing a crime. Meanwhile, Albert returns to the supermarket, where he runs into Annie again. He once more tells her he's not looking for a relationship. But the woman insists that's no reason to deny himself pleasure. They end up having dinner together and spending the night. The next morning, Albert shows up at the diner in great spirits but still refuses to take part in the robbery. At the same time, Willie is reading the newspaper. Their pension funds are being seized by the same bank that plans to take Joe's house. All three friends had been loyal customers of that bank for many years, only to discover now that it's stealing their retirement money. The friends are shocked. This becomes the last straw, and Albert finally agrees to the robbery. They go to see Jesus, a pet shop owner, who's also a professional criminal. The men promise him 25% of the profit and no risk, since they'll handle everything themselves. Jesus explains that robbing a bank can get them a life sentence if they're caught. Joe argues that he has nothing to lose. His house will be taken soon, and his pension is gone. The criminal is impressed by Joe's speech and agrees to help. That evening, sitting in a pub, the friends discuss how much money to take from the bank. Joe calculates how much was stolen from them and says that if they manage to get more, they'll donate the difference to charity. With Jesus' help, they create a detailed plan. They learn the location of the cameras, prepare a getaway vehicle, start exercising to improve their fitness and not look like old men, and arrange solid alibis. The would-be robbers even practice shooting, but Jesus warns them that killing someone during a robbery is one of the worst mistakes they could make. The friends agree among themselves to surrender if the police arrive. Finally, on the morning of the robbery, Joe brings his former son-in-law home and teaches him how to make a proper breakfast, just in case Joe ends up in prison. Brooklyn is pleasantly surprised. Later, Joe tells her that her father will pick her up from school today. The girl promises to give her dad a chance to mend their relationship, and Joe gives her a long, heartfelt hug goodbye. The former son-in-law tries to talk Joe out of his plan, but Joe says his problems are his own. If Johnny returns from the robbery, his ex-son-in-law must finally take responsibility and care for his daughter. To secure their alibi, Joe, Willie, and Albert volunteer at a charity fair. At the right moment, they all sneak away from their posts, change clothes, and head to the job in a small stolen van. Joe gives his friends guns loaded with blanks to make sure no one gets hurt. The men put on masks of Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Sammy Davis Jr., then enter the bank, lock the doors, and fire a shot into the air. Terrified people drop to the floor. While the tellers fill the bags with cash, a little girl hands over her doll, thinking the robbers will take it too. Willie tries to comfort her, telling her about his granddaughter. Suddenly he feels unwell. Willie collapses and the girl, trying to help him breathe, almost pulls off his mask. She also notices the same wristwatch with his granddaughter's photo on the dial. Taking advantage of the robber's confusion, a bank employee presses the alarm button, and the manager grabs the guard's gun that had fallen on the floor. The manager threatens the friends and orders them to lie down. Joe threatens him back, but in the end, the manager fires an entire magazine, missing every shot. Joe tells the manager that he's about to meet his maker and fires the gun himself. When the manager starts screaming, Joe says the bullets are blanks. The robbers order everyone to count out loud from 90 to 1, then get on the bus and drive away. By the time the police arrive at the bank, the friends have already stopped the stolen vehicle, grabbed the money bags, they manage to steal $2,300,000, and each drives off separately. That evening, the friends celebrate their successful robbery at a restaurant, where Albert plays the saxophone on stage. After drinking quite a bit, they head home singing, but Willie suddenly feels unwell again. Meanwhile, the FBI begins its investigation, led by the same agent who previously interviewed Joe. Reviewing the security footage, they determine that one of the robbers is African American and no younger than 70. Joe and Albert visit Willie in the hospital, where the doctor tells them he urgently needs a kidney transplant. Meanwhile, Willie watches the news in his room. The bank manager gives an interview, claiming the robbers were very young and agile since they managed to dodge all the bullets. Albert is furious that Willie didn't tell them about his medical condition, while Joe says he's ready to donate his own kidney tomorrow if needed. At the same time, the FBI agent appears on the news, saying the robbers were likely elderly. The administrator of the supermarket, the same one where the three friends once tried to steal groceries, contacts the FBI. He compares the surveillance footage and realizes that the suspect's height, weight, and even walking style match. The FBI arrests Joe and Albert. Willie, due to his health, remains in the hospital. The agents question all three friends about what they were doing on the day of the robbery. They tell the same story, how they woke up, had breakfast, and worked at the charity fair. Testimonies are also collected from witnesses: a diner waitress, a man with dementia, and a friend of the trio. Albert says that during the robbery, he was in the restroom because he has serious intestinal issues. Joe claims he was selling tickets at the fair's booth, while Willie worked in the haunted house, scaring visitors. After the robbery, Albert melted the masks and fake guns in a factory furnace, then re-entered the restroom through a removable back wall and exited through the door, just as he had entered, all of which was captured on surveillance video. Meanwhile, Joe took a cab to see Jesus and gave him the bags of money to launder, and Willie returned the stolen vehicle to its place. Afterward, all three went back to their posts at the fair, and their presence was caught on camera, giving them solid alibis. The FBI agent admits the story sounds airtight, but insists that every criminal makes one mistake eventually, and that's how their plans fall apart. He takes Joe and Albert to the hospital, where Willie is. There, Willie and several elderly stand-ins are placed in wheelchairs and rolled into the gym. Then, the little girl from the bank, the one Willie comforted and who almost pulled off his mask, is brought in. She walks past the suspects and other old men, then stops in front of Willie and tugs on the agent's jacket. When he kneels down beside her, the girl says she doesn't see the man she spoke to during the robbery. "He's not here." "Are you sure?" "Yep, I'm positive. I got a great memory." The agent is stunned. He asks if she's sure, and she nods. Joe tries to hide a smile. The girl repeats that the man isn't there and asks if she can go home. The agent reluctantly agrees. The girl smiles at Willie. Sometime later, Joe sits in a diner when Jesus walks in, carrying a large pet carrier with a puppy inside. Jesus says all the vaccinations are done, the medical papers are in order, and everything's fine. Joe asks if Jesus took his share, but he shakes his head and says it's society's duty to take care of the older generation. Joe remembers that the bank robber said the exact same phrase. He asks Jesus where his neck tattoo went, and Jesus explains that it was drawn with henna, just to throw off the investigation. At that moment, the FBI agent walks into the diner, and Joe quietly warns Jesus. But the agent only returns Joe's wallet, which had been kept in the evidence locker. Joe introduces Jesus to the agent and says he runs a dog shelter. They shake hands, and the agent asks if Joe is getting the puppy for himself. Joe explains it's for his granddaughter. She's now an honor roll student. The agent asks if he can see the puppy. He kneels down beside the carrier, looks through the grate, and coos at the dog, unaware that bundles of cash are taped to the top of the carrier. Joe says it's time to take the puppy home before his granddaughter gets back from school. He, the agent, and Jesus leave the diner, and a waitress comes up to the table. She grumbles that Joe once again left her his tip and small change. But under the napkin with the note, "Kisses," there's a stack of $100 bills. The community center where the friends used to spend time with other retirees also receives a donation. At the hospital, Willie undergoes a kidney transplant. Albert is his donor. Seeing how happy Brooklyn is with the puppy, Joe reflects that in life, if you're lucky, you meet a few good friends. The kind who stay with you till the very end. You grow old together, go through hardships together, do everything together, laugh and cry together. This is his speech for Albert, who truly is that kind of friend for Joe. The friends are later seen at Albert and Annie's wedding. All the guests raise their glasses to the newlyweds. Willie's daughter and granddaughter are there too, and Brooklyn's father seems to have finally reconciled with his daughter. Everyone drinks and celebrates. A bit later, the three friends stand on a bridge, looking out over the party. Albert complains that he doesn't quite understand how he ended up married. But then, he feels something strange. Something that seems a lot like happiness.